Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Guest, and welcome to the Imagine Golf Podcast. This podcast is dedicated to help you get the swing and the game that you've always imagined. Today's episode is brought to you by Imagine Golf and PXG. You can go to our site, imaginegolf.com, to see all of our offerings, including our free drills, our practice plans, our golf ebooks and videos, or to book a lesson with me at our state-of-the-art studio right outside of Philadelphia, or even virtually from anywhere in the world through our partner, thegolfliveapp.com. You can sign up for our free tips and videos that go out once a week, every week, by simply dropping us your email. Well, this is a fun podcast for me. Well, they're all fun now that I think about it, but it revolves around how the brain learns, right? Not just how it learns golf. We're going to be talking specifically about, decoding the brain and how we learn or in fact unlearn, right, a certain movement in golf. But nothing we'll talk about today is unique to golf, right? Everyone's brain learns relatively the same way. And while there's nuances to how each individual learns, that doesn't change how the brain functions and how the brain intercepts and decodes things, if you would. So, look, I thought it was important to talk about it because, if you're trying to learn a swing a certain way and do, certain things, and they're not consistent with how the brain learns, then just when you say it out loud, you're wasting your time. I mean, golf is a game of super intricate movements, precise timing. And even though it seems like it's just, a simple act of like hitting the ball, right? And that's ultimately what it really is, right? Just hitting the ball. But man, beneath the surface is a complex interplay of brain activity. I mean, muscle memory, sensory feedback, and understanding how the brain learns can often unlock I don't want to say the secrets, if you would, but for lack of a better word, the secrets to faster improvement and more consistent performance. And who doesn't want those two things, right? Who doesn't want to learn faster or become better faster and become more consistent, right? Everyone does. No one ever comes to me and says, "Oh, Daniel, look, man, I'm absolutely murdering the ball. I'm hitting it way too far. I'm hitting it way too accurate, and I'm scoring way too low. Can you help me change all three of those?" Right? It said no one, right? So let's get into it, right? Let's talk about how the brain works, right? And I'm not going to get super technical on you because I'm going to try to keep it simple and stupid, as my father used to say, right? But I'm going to keep it in terms of golf, right? So the first thing when we're talking about how the brain works, if you would, is you need to understand, and I think most people do understand this, that you need to build what are called neural highways or pathways, if you would, right? I mean, every swing someone takes carves a pathway in your brain, right? Consciously and subconsciously. And just while we're on the topic here, your subconscious is just like a tape recorder. It just keeps recording over and over and over again with no pause, with no emotion. It just records, if you would, almost like a flight recorder, right? A black box recorder, right? But back to that, every swing that you take carves a pathway in your brain. And these pathways are formed by interconnected neurons, right? That represent a specific sequence of muscle activations that are needed to execute a said movement, right? Let me say that again. These pathways are formed by interconnected neurons that represent the specific sequence of muscle activations needed to execute the movement. And the more you repeat that movement, or in this case, the swing, the stronger these pathways become, which lead to ingrained motor patterns, right? This is why consistent practice is key because it reinforces the desired movements and makes them feel more automatic, right? We've talked about a million times, and we talk about it every day in our practice, if you would, that look, there are three levels, or how we learn are really three different states, for lack of a better, three levels, right? The first is consciously incompetent. You don't know how to move. The second is consciously competent, where you know what to do. And as long as you're thinking about what to do, you can do it the majority of the time. And then that leads to unconscious competency, where you just do it naturally. It doesn't even matter anymore, right? And there's a substance called, and I'm going to probably mispronounce this, called myelin, right? Myelin, myelin, right? I want you to think of myelin as like insulation for these neuro pathways, right? It's like a fatty substance. Everything in our body seems, everything in my body lately is fatty, right? But it kind of forms around these neurons, which speeds up the transmission of signals, making the movement over time more efficient. And the more you practice a specific swing, the more this myelin builds up, leading to a faster and smoother execution, right? Which you would think on the surface is good, right? However, this also means that bad habits become deeply ingrained, right? Making them harder to break or even unwind, right? So we've all heard this term muscle memory, if you would. This is what myelin is talking about, or this is what the actual substance that creates that muscle memory of sorts, right? So we got to make sure that we're doing things correctly, or we're ingraining patterns, right? Not only mentally into our body, but physically into our body, right? That are very, very, very difficult to break, right? So the third piece of how we learn, if you would, is the sensory feedback loop, right? The brain is constantly receiving feedback from your senses during your swing, right? As an example, your eyes track the ball in the club, right? Your muscles sense their position and or tension, right? And your inner ear and your brain provide information about balance and movement, right? And by the way, my balance was bad, but at least when I played, man, I felt like Scotty Scheffler without the great game. Although it did shoot 76, so that's not so bad. But anyway, this feedback loop allows your brain to fine tune the swing in real time, making adjustments based on the current situation. So you go to the top of your backswing as an example, and the club's wide open, right? You physically don't maybe not know that, right? Consciously don't know that, but your brain does know that and does its best to make some type of alteration to close the face on the way down, right? And that happens in every piece part of the swing, right? I always use the analogy of when we're eating, right? Nobody over the age of 2.5 stabs himself with a fork when they're eating anymore, right? Because that sensory feedback loop is so tight that you don't even have to think about it anymore. It just happens, right? Golf swings are no different, right? This constant level of feedback is carousing through your brain constantly, and it's either in a positive state or it's a negative state, meaning that if you're doing things right, it's a positive. If you're doing things wrong, it's a negative, right? So we got to make sure that we're practicing appropriately and that we're doing things appropriately, right? What does that mean? Well, look, if you don't know anything about golf, you got to take a lesson, man. All right. Take a lesson if you want to improve faster. If you think you know a lot about golf because you've been buzzing around on social media, take a lesson, right? And if you know a lot about golf, but you can't change things over time, right, for the positive, then take a lesson. Because if you're with a trusted golf professional, that knows anything about what they're doing, they'll point you in the right direction as to what you should be working on. Right? A lot of people, over half the people that come in and see us, think they're doing one thing when in reality that's not even the case. Oh, I'm early extending. I'm coming over the top. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And I don't even pay attention to what they say until I actually see them swing to see if in fact that's what they're doing. Right? But this sensory feedback loop is a real thing. And if it's not a good feedback loop, then you're doing nothing but ingraining poor habits again and again and again. Number four, the power of visualization. Man, we've known this for decades now, right? This mental rehearsal, if you would, plays a crucial role in learning golf. There's not a professional out there playing the game that doesn't talk about visualization. And most of them talk about it down to the nth degree, right? I've heard people say, oh, they visualize something so specific that, they can feel it in their mind. They can smell it in their mind, right? These are really, really high performers when it comes to visualization, right? Jason Day famously said, he looks to the target, he looks back to the ball, and then he looks back to the target, and he can literally see a line from the target all the way back to his ball, and then he hits it. I mean, that's just amazing to me, right? But strengthening, right, visualization helps strengthen these neural pathways and improves our motor skills, right? And top golfers spend countless hours of their days visualizing their golf shots in practice, right? And they definitely do it when they're actually on the course playing in the tournament. So we need to absolutely understand the power of visualization and how that applies to the golf swing. Not just picking a target and trying to hit the target, what you're trying to visualize with your body movements, what you're trying to visualize with your hands, what you're trying to visualize with the club, if you would, right? Because it's really, really critical in the overall performance or in the overall rate at which your golf game grows for the positive, right? Number five is overcoming old habits. Man, this is probably one of the hardest, right? Unlearning a bad habit is like carving a new pathway through like a dense forest, if you would, right? It requires a lot of conscious effort. It requires a lot of repetition. We got to weaken those old neural pathways, and we got to strengthen the new ones, right? You got to break the cycle you may have heard in the past, right? You got to break a few eggs before you can change something. You got to change your paradigm. There's a million antidotes, if you would, but this is definitely where intentional, purposeful, focused practice and biomechanical drills come in, right? If you're trying to learn a certain feel, by the way, if you can't feel something, there is almost no chance that you're going to be able to replicate it, right? But I can guarantee you, if you don't know what you're supposed to do, then there's no way that you can replicate. You're not going to stumble upon a great golf swing. Just doesn't happen, right? And maybe it does, or somewhere in the world. I've never seen it happen. All right. So we've got to have this focus practice, and we got to have these drills that change your biomechanics in the swing to the ones that we're trying to replicate. Right? Doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to disrupt the current pattern. If it doesn't, then there's no chance. This is why you just can't hit balls and get better, right? You just can't go to the driving range, and dig it out of the dirt, as Ben Hogan used to say, and expect to get better. You're not Ben Hogan, and there's no chance that you're going to get better anytime soon. What you're going to do is just engrave the same bad habits over and over and over again, right? Number 6 is the process, or the importance, I should say, of feedback, right? What I mean by feedback, external feedback, whether it's from a coach or technology, definitely accelerates the learning process, right? So getting back to trying to get better by yourself, look, can it happen? Of course it happens every day, right? Is it easy? Absolutely not, right? But when you have external feedback from, like I said, from either a coach or technology, it absolutely accelerates that learning process, because it provides information about your swing mechanics and ball flight that is relevant or germane or correct to what you're trying to accomplish, right? This feedback helps the brain identify areas for improvement and make necessary adjustments, right? Your brain will make, incredible amounts of adjustments in a golf swing, right? The entire length of your golf swing from a time perspective, from a golf pro, is just under 1 second, and the average Joe amateur is just above that, 1.15 or 1.2 seconds, if you would. So think about the complexity of the movement, right? And think about all the different feedback loops, if you would, right, in a golf swing, right? And you're swinging at what the average person swings at, like 75 miles an hour, right? So at 75 miles an hour in just over a second, you got to make a lot of decisions, and you're not consciously making these decisions, right? So this feedback, if it's correct feedback, and it better be correct, but when the feedback is correct, your brain will help you try to get there for sure, right? Number 7 is the importance of individualism. Well, I can barely say that. Because everyone's unique, right? No secret there, right? And while learning styles vary, everything we went through doesn't vary, if you would, right? So I'll give you that some people are visual, while other people prefer verbal. Other people are, kinesthetic as far as feedback is concerned, meaning, touchy-feely, if you would. And that's on the instructor, if you would, help define the right teaching methods that resonate with the individual student, right? And their learning style will definitely optimize the learning process. But you should know, like, how is it that you learn, right? I have a lot of people that say to me, "Hey, I'm a visual learner." And the reality is they're more kinesthetic, meaning they have to feel something before they can actually really put it to use. So how you actually prefer, or your preferred learning style, should be taken in consideration and should be consistent with your practice routine. Um, and that's really it. Those are kind of the 7 steps, if you would, or the 7 requirements that I should say are required to kind of unlock your potential, or how the brain actually learns a golf swing, right? It's not through just swinging and hitting a million balls, right? And I would challenge anybody, let's just put it out there. Take 100 golf balls and just hit them, right? And let's look at your metrics before, right? Before the 100 on the first ball, and then after the 100 balls, and see how better they get, right? And then let's take 20 balls, right? 1/5, and have those 20 balls be intentful, purposeful, have them visualize, have them go through what they're trying to accomplish, and then watch the difference after those 20, right? I guarantee you the student who hit 20 intentional, purposeful balls will outperform the student that hit 100 balls every single solitary day of the week, right? So I thought it was important to talk about, like, it's not just about, like I said, digging balls out of the dirt. It's more about embracing and unlocking your potential, right? And once you understand how the brain learns golf, it can empower you to kind of take control of the game. I mean, if you embrace that thought of deliberate practice, if you start utilizing visualization, you start seeking feedback from professionals, right, or from technology, you definitely can create a more efficient learning environment, not just, not just on the surface, if you would, but from the way that your brain learns. These neural pathways will be different, right? They'll be more enhanced, right? They'll be moving towards the right direction. You'll be developing a swing that feels more natural and produces more consistent results. So the next time you step onto the course, or more importantly, probably step into the practice area, think about it, right? Think about how your brain learns, and we will definitely see you playing better golf, one swing at a time. All right, look, that's all I have today for the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the follow button on wherever you get your podcast. Be sure to check out the Imagine Golf, our site, I should say, imaginegolf.com. And you can follow us on all the social media platforms. We're on all of them. And here's to getting you the game and the swing, or swing and the game, however you want to say it, that you've always imagined.